Hello. Thank you, sir. Yeah, so this is also new for me. The last time I was here making fun of other people's apps. We're not going to talk about any apps. Well, a little bit, but not about design of apps. I am Hidde, for the ones that don't know me. I am an indie developer from an app called Helm, but I also work as a senior UI engineer at RevenueCat. I'm going to cover myself here. Whatever I say is not from RevenueCat, it's from me. But I'm going to introduce you to my panelists that I picked. They're all familiar faces to me, at least, and I think they bring a really nice diversity of opinions and experiences and angles. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to introduce the first one. Excuse me if I read a little bit, because there's so much things they have done, I can't remember it all. The first one is Clemens Strasser. He's an indie developer based in Graz, Austria. He's most famously, he's more famous from building very, very, very accessible games. He's so good at building these accessible games that he got 2 nominations for an Apple Design Award, and he won once as a student, and he won once this year with Art of Fauna. He calls himself a friend of the Hoopus, so let's welcome him on stage. Clemens? So everyone who knows Clemens knows that he buys a lot of coffee beans.
Yes.
But what a lot of people don't know is that he also has an excessive amount of Lego. It's so much that it doesn't fit his apartment anymore, but it's in the basement of his uncle. So Clemens, other than the hoopoe, what's your favorite animal?
Probably the Mandarin duck.
The Mandarin duck. Is that why it's the app icon of Art of Fauna?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's a wonderful animal.
I've also heard you've been tracking the Korrelbahn, a new train that goes to Italy. What's the first thing you're going to do in Italy?
Buy more food. So usually when I'm traveling to Italy, I'm always bringing one empty suitcase that I'm just filling with noodles and sauce and stuff like that.
And beans.
And coffee beans, of course. So yeah, go
Perfect.
there and go a bit shopping.
Great. Well, the second guest is Monica. Monica is a familiar face to many of us because she's one of the co-founders also of Cocoa Heads Macedonia. They do a great iOS conf there as well. If you've ever been, if you've not been, I can highly recommend it. I went to the first edition and it was really nice. She also works at Vivino, where she builds like great experiences for wine lovers. And let's be honest, we all love a glass of wine when the time is right. Outside of her work, Monica's life is full of plants. Apparently the plant collection got so big that she has to give away some. I don't know how she does it, mine always die in the first week. So let's welcome Monica. So Monica, for you, we also have 2 starter questions.
Okay.
Do you have a go-to wine, or working at Vivino, do you just drink all the time?
Yeah, all the time. But yeah, probably Chardonnay.
A Chardonnay,
Yeah, it's
nice.
very basic, but I love it.
And then I've heard from some source that you once said that as a kid you wanted to give birth to a small horse.
Oh my god.
How do you feel about that today?
Proud.
Proud. Did you succeed?
Not yet.
Good.
I'll let you know.
Well, let's all welcome Monica. So next up, she is the most energetic developer I know, and she always brings joy in the room. So she's called Sophia, and she is a developer and designer, working working in Ambi Studio together with Cesar. He's probably in the room here somewhere too. There, hey. They're most famously for a cooking app called Amber, which is a recipe organizer for literally all Apple platforms, I think, right? Like all platforms, that's quite something. She also helps consulting with companies to design better apps. So let's welcome Sophia. Hello.
Hey.
So, for a recipe organizing app, is there a fixed recipe you always use to test your UIs with?
No, actually not.
No? Do you have a favorite recipe?
Yeah, it depends on what mood I'm in. But for food,
Not too spicy, I guess.
well, actually, I really like spicy
You do
food.
like that.
But I love a good lasagna
Oh.
with red wine.
Good.
But I also love to bake.
Nice. And do you remember the last meal that? Because apparently she was into dancing as well. And apparently you still dance a lot when you eat a happy meal, like, or when you eat a meal that makes you really happy. What was the last meal that you ate that made you dance?
I can't recall the very last meal, but one meal that I always do my happy food dancing
There we go.
is tonkatsu, which is fried chicken with rice. It's a Japanese dish. It's so good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Then the last panelist, he's an old friend of mine. He's a fellow Dutchie. He's one that has by far the most of experience of us, I would say. His name is Jasper Hauser. He is a designer, founder, basically everything that's related to apps these days. He's also very famous from very old apps like Camino and App Zapper and Disco. Disco is like this very famous macOS app where it lets you burn CDs, remember those? But he also won 3 Apple Design Awards, so we have quite some cubes on stage here. So yeah, let's welcome Jasper. So Jasper, what is your favorite darkroom filter and why?
Ooh, I don't have a specific filter that I use, honestly. I love the editing myself the most.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've also I've heard that you've been with your wife for 26 years since last week. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I do wonder, why do you have old leather slippers that are older than that?
I got those from my uncle a long time ago, and I think I was 16 or 17. Same size feet, and they were very, very high quality slippers. And they never wore out, so that's why I still have them. They look amazing still.
They don't make them like that.
No, they don't.
Nice. Okay. Well, these are our panelists. Let's all give them a warm welcome. So yeah, like Noam said, there's a Slido. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to shoot them to the Slido. We'll get to them at some point. We'll put them in between, I guess. What we're gonna do, we have a few topics we want to talk about, and I'm gonna try to say as little as possible. That's hard for me, but I'll do my best. And obviously, we start with the elephant in the room, which is not AI, because we're not trying to not cover that as well. Maybe it will, but we're going to start talking about liquid glass. Obviously, very, very big topic this summer. I feel like a lot of us have been very, very busy redesigning their apps. Jasper, you are a very experienced designer. I know you haven't shipped your liquid glass update yet. What are your thoughts, like first impressions versus after using it for a little while? Do you have any change for you?
I think like on iPhone, I think it's the most refined platform by far. I quite enjoy it there. I think it works fairly well. It's more on the iPad and Mac where I feel Apple has stretched a little bit. Well, has made some trade-offs that I wouldn't have made. I personally, it's very clear that liquid glass is a variation of what they designed for Vision OS, and I kind of miss that pragmatism on the larger screen platforms. And so I like it, but I think they could do better.
Right. What would you have done differently?
I mean, I think that the simplest thing I would have loved is just like a toggle to, instead of an accessibility feature, and just a toggle where it's like a matte or like a milk glass texture, so that we can choose between like the fancy weird distortion stuff versus just a simpler version. And then on a Mac, I'm not a big fan of the inset sidebar and the floaty toolbar stuff. But I think for most apps it works, but I think even Apple has to admit that not for all apps it works great.
Yeah. So, Sophia, you have Ember which runs on all platforms. It sounds like an extremely busy summer.
Yes.
How did you cope with that?
It's been a lot, and I don't think we did like all the super flashy custom things. We had to make sure the tab bar and navigation work properly on all platforms, just so you get the right feeling for it without overdoing it. And also, in my personal opinion, I think Liquid Glass has a lot of its own personality. So you have to balance that with the brand of your own app. So maybe not bring too much into it, but yeah,
Right.
you still want that new feeling, so it lives well among other Apple apps or other apps that are updated
Right.
during the summer. So.
Yeah. I personally really agree that I feel like the playfulness is not just the glass; it's also the roundness of all the things, right? Like
And the animations.
Every got a bit bigger and gooier.
Yes.
For you, Clemens, you didn't do well with your new app, of course, Pocket Shelf. You did 99% glass.
Yeah. But for Art of Fauna, at least, there were just tiny things that I had to adjust, just to make it, like, the app is still built with SwiftUI, and to make it feel like it's part of iOS 26, and that worked quite well because of the Art of Fauna looks like an old book, and the little glass elements look like magnifying glasses on it, so that worked quite well. But yeah, in most parts of the app, I have my custom UI, and I had to stick with that. For Pocket Shelf, quite a different story.
Right. And you, Monica, have you implemented Liquid Glass, or have you tried to ignore it so far?
Yeah, I've been trying on my projects, but at Vivino, our app is pretty huge. It's been there for 14 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot of UI kits established.
Right.
And then we, of course, it's SwiftUI, but we are taking smaller steps and also having in mind that we also have Android app and trying to find a way how we'll integrate the Liquid Glass, but also not make it as different, much more as the Android app. So there are quite some discussions in the design team.
So these discussions, how involved is the engineering side of this within a company like Vivino? It's quite big, I can imagine.
Yeah, luckily we are.
Okay.
So we have a lot of lunch and learn sessions. Whenever some big change is introduced, we are the ones that we have to tell the designers what's happening in the developer world, and also to be aligned with the newest technology and newest designs.
Cool. There's obviously a lot of criticism on Liquid Glass because it's new, and everything that's new is bad. But especially on the accessibility front, I think. Do we feel that's justified? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I definitely see in some areas that it's justified, but I still think that the criticism is often given by people who don't really know all the accessibility settings that are there, from like reduced motion over higher contrast and stuff like that. So if you really need those settings to adjust it in a way that it works for your app, then as long as the developers also use the accessibility frameworks well enough, then it shouldn't be that big of a problem.
Right, yeah. I found this as well. Like, if it changes quite drastically if you turn on a few of those. So do we feel like they should have surfaced those toggles maybe more to the front, or like, I don't know.
I personally find it hard that the default doesn't work for as many people as the previous. I think that's the discrepancy that I see, because like Apple has always been like literally the best in any tech company ever when it comes to offering accessibility features both for customers and for developers. That's not the problem. The problem is that you have to go find it, or that have to know that they exist. And I think like previous versions of their OS, their visual languages by default were a little bit more friendly. Whereas right now it's much more opinionated in a direction that I don't think is as accessible by default.
So, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, like you mentioned, everything is more round and it takes up more space. And some buttons are very clear, they are buttons, but some buttons are not as clear because they might, they don't have that roundness to them or that glassy effect. And also if you go into control settings and if you turn on accessibility, so you remove the translucency and such, you don't actually see them as buttons at all. Like they're just symbols.
That's not good.
That's not good. So
Right.
yeah, I feel like we're getting there. Like I can see their vision.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like we're quite there yet.
No, I mean, it is, I would say, from personal experience, I do think that out-of-the-box apps like look 12 times better, right? Like compared to if you get used to the liquid glass after a while, if you then use an older version of that same app, it just really feels outdated, at least in my experience. And I think, considering it's only the first version of a new design era, there's definitely things to go, but I'm a fan personally. But let's continue on accessibility, because I think I feel it's becoming more of a bigger topic for good reasons, and it should be. It's still not there yet, but I personally feel like that it's been in the community. It feels like a lot more work than it actually is. Like there were some tweets sometimes like, oh yeah, you can forget about accessibility on the first version and good to do. We all know which one. What do you think, Clemens?
Yeah,
am I right?
Yeah, especially if you're not doing too much custom controls and custom stuff, then SwiftUI makes it so super easy to make stuff accessible. And I think there's not a good reason to skip on accessibility at all. There was never a good reason, in my opinion, and SwiftUI makes it so easy that the reason is even getting small.
Right. But also, Monica, maybe for you, this is more a question for you, like, because accessibility is not just apps, of course. Like if you host an event or a conference, it's also quite a big topic. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, I do agree. Well, unfortunately in Macedonia, that's not a big topic.
Right.
We are trying to make the event, like the conference, as much as accessible as possible. Of course, there's a lot of space for improvement, but it's very nice to see in this community that people are aware of that, and everyone, like Clemens, they are trying to push for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's very good.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you design new experiences, new features, how do you accommodate accessibility in mind? Because I know it's very tempting to make it nice and shiny first.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've been designing apps for a while, and I've definitely made the mistake in the first versions of the first apps that I made to not know about it. I haven't had a formal education, so I don't even know if that's taught in school. I also find that actually the learning about accessibility isn't as accessible, oddly enough. It's not as broad a topic, and so I appreciate that we're talking about it here in this context. So I think I generally tend to start with the obvious stuff, which is make sure the contrast is good, which is just design principles, but also the flexibility, and so responsive design. That being popularized and Apple adopting that as well has been really good, because that helps a lot. It's still not easy, as an app to go from left to right and switch the language directions. That becomes hard. Even for developers, translating an app is still an effort, and so I would throw that under accessibility as well. And then beyond that, I agree that by default if you stick to just system controls, it's pretty straightforward, but as soon as you get into custom territory, it does require quite a bit of effort to do the appropriate testing in all the different accessibility features and contexts that you can use something to make sure that it fully works. And so I'll readily admit that the app, like specifically Darkroom, doesn't fully fall into that category, but that's also because it's a photo editor. So for people who can't see, that app is, to begin with, a bit complicated. But that doesn't mean that obviously we do take a look at that as much as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually it. I've never thought about that. That Darkroom is completely different use case in the sense of.
Well, it isn't, and I do, like, for instance, like right now with the new like foundation model that can give a visual description of a photo. Like actually in that context, Darkroom might actually, like, even for visually impaired people, might start to help much more.
Yeah.
And so like our controls and everything is accessible, but it is a bit awkward. It's like visually impaired people using a photo editor is not like an obvious use case, and still we do support it. But new technologies do, and that's why we kind of hop along with it. Maybe not as the first, but that we definitely do, because we do see things evolve where this could be more accessible and more possible for people to use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. But like me and Paul, we have a music app called Now Playing, and one of the first things that was where we were always struggling with VoiceOver is that there's so much content going on, like so much sections of content in our case. And it felt to us that it became very tedious to, like, well, obviously we're not day-to-day voiceover users, but still it felt like way more reading of sections compared to the actual content, which is the power of our app. So we decided to do it with, like, so with foundation models we use now to generate one story specifically for voiceover.
Exactly.
And I think that's the trend I think Apple also really loves seeing, is that people just think with accessibility first in mind and not so much. I feel like that has shifted quite a bit in the last few years.
Well, I think it's also a very powerful piece of technology and a way of thinking, because honestly, I've definitely learned things through going through the accessibility flow, from which I learned that I should just restructure a piece of the app, either because the way we structured it was wrong, or just the design of it was just inefficient, and we could do it in a much faster, more efficient workflow. Then
I kind of want to talk with all of you a bit about the future. I feel like the future of apps is shifting a little bit. Every year we hear, I think right now we hear the word app intent more often than the best ever, almost, because it's literally on every single sentence they say about every framework. Do we feel like that's a hint to where apps are going? Will apps be nothing more than just a data source? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. I mean, my personal take is that I feel like apps will be more hyper-personalized, and we wouldn't differentiate which app we would use. I mean, that's what I would like, to not differentiate fully, but actually have certain tasks that I want to do within every moment of the day, and then with the help of those apps and app intents probably or something else in place, that could be possible.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like I would like to see the possibility of third-party apps changing data with each other in a different way, like you currently can with your own app and reminders or calendar, for instance, so that you have that an app has one specific task, but that can be used in other apps.
Yeah,
that's something I would like to see in the future.
Yeah.
Fully integrated, yeah.
Yeah, so that it becomes more like a personal assistant and you can speak with it. It's sort of like I want the HomePod to work.
Yeah. Instead you get the wrong song.
She never listens to me. And it's driving me crazy.
Yeah. Do we think UI is moving more to the background because of this as well? Because everything's going to be.
Yeah, I prefer if an app has like great widgets, especially on the lock screen, so I can complete quick tasks like logging my journey, driving my car, for instance, for you know, when you run a company, you have to journal all the trips you make. But yeah, things like that. You don't want to think about it. You just want to do it and complete it and move on to the next thing, really.
Yeah. Yes, sir, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on the context per app. Obviously, I agree that like app as a data source makes a lot of sense. Just generally speaking, I agree with the open part. Like Darkroom really struggles with this currently because like the way photos are shared, even between the Photos app and us, is like roundabout, and not as pleasant. It's all super sandboxed and like to third party and other apps. People have asked many times for us to be able to pass along stuff to other apps, and so I think there's a gap there as well. I do agree that if UIs become more conversational, which is what they're appearing to go, I think the app intent way is the way to do that. But I do think that it'll be very contained to the top 5 things that you do repeatedly. I think apps will always exist for the more deep niche features that you won't want to or cannot do through conversation. And there are tons of stuff, like in the context of Darkroom, like if you want to make a specific edit, like doing that conversationally doesn't make a lot of sense. So I do think like widgets is a good example. There will be lightweight interactions, and sometimes you just need to go back to the heavyweight, full experience. So I think it'll be a sliding scale, probably. Yeah.
Right. I think in my opinion, you'll struck a really good note there. I think you see also now, for example, the Meta glasses, right? It's also all context and all very small UI parts with little interactions.
Yeah.
And I think that's generally like, well, Vision OS we somewhat see it, but you're not wearing a Vision OS in public if you're not normal.
Nope. Well, you can, but that doesn't mean you will.
Yeah. Please don't. So I think this year during .c they had a session about how to design like interactive snippet view, right? And I think again that's very much a glimpse in where Apple also wants to be to me. So I'm very curious what the UI designer will be doing in a few years. We'll see.
There will still be apps.
There will still be
and
apps.
games
Yeah.
as well.
Especially games. Yeah.
Especially we all need to design games. Accessible games. He needs more competition. Yeah, no, that's fair. Let's do a question from the audience. One is about Swift UI versus UIKit. That's always a nice topic to pick on. Is that I haven't developed in UIKit before. I sometimes find myself wanting to use a feature that hasn't been ported over to Swift UI. I'd like to avoid learning another framework, but is that realistic? Clemens, what do you think?
I don't think it's realistic not to learn UIKit. As I learned during building Pocket Shelf, like there are often, like Swift UI brings you 90%, 95% there and many times, but for Pocket Shelf in particular, we had a thing where we wanted to bring up the keyword very quickly, and we just couldn't do that with Swift UI, and we had to go back to UIKit. And yeah, I think sometimes you have to do the deep dive, but it looks more scary than it is actually. Yeah. So if you do, there are so many good resources out there. There are very smart people on the internet that can help you, like Seb helped me with UIKit. And
of course he did.
Yeah, of course he did. No, who else? So I think it's not that hard like it appears.
Right. Yeah, I somewhat agree with that in the sense of, yes, what your example specifically is like, yes, if you want to go the extra mile and really polish your app to slightly next level, you need to port to UIKit every now and then. On the other hand, do you really need to learn UIKit the ins and outs? I think once you if you learn like how to do a UI view representable as a minimum, and even ChatGPT and stuff probably knows that part because UIKit is quite old. Only SAP uses it. I feel like then you can come very far.
No, definitely. I think, like I said, Swift UI brings you 95% of the way, and that's enough for most apps. But if you want to just do the extra mile or like the extra little bit of polish, and sometimes you have to jump there, but you don't have to learn the full framework for that.
Yeah, and Sophia, because if I remember correctly, you're also a designer that learned how to code a little bit. Did SwiftUI help with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I do my design, I do it straight in Xcode. So I have my plan and I just pop in like a string for text, image here, description, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I turn those strings into whatever they need to be.
Yeah.
And then I see the layout and I was like, no,
Nice.
and start moving things around.
I wish the Xcode actually made that sound.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can make that happen.
Jasper, I think Darkroom has a lot less SwiftUI. Do you miss the power of the simplicity of SwiftUI songs?
Well, we've been working on making the migration over.
Mhm.
I think for Darkroom the complexity is that it's twofold. One is that we actually have quite a bit of custom UI, and we found that earlier versions of SwiftUI definitely were not up to snuff for our requirements. And then specifically in the larger layout, so where we have a lot of stuff going on, multiple views and God knows what, we definitely have a hybrid where we do have a UI kit for some of the heavy lifting, and then the smaller views are SwiftUI. So yeah, we're migrating over wherever we can. We try and use Swift, but we've definitely bumped our heads on some stuff through the years. Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a SwiftUI helmet.
Yes. I mean, we all like the promise is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just the automagic stuff doesn't always play along. Yeah.
And of course, there was a question. We're talking about SwiftUI because then, of course, there is a follow-up question about architecture within SwiftUI because that's always a very popular topic. Of course, there's like TCA, of MVVM, and now more vanilla SwiftUI. Like, do we have strong opinions about? No, not you, Jasper. Do we have strong opinions?
I mean, my team has we tried TCA, and now we've like new SwiftUI or Swift has like better support, so we don't need to as much. But yeah, we had to like we're like when we didn't, like shit didn't work. Pardon the French.
Yeah. And you, Monica, do you have a preference or doesn't
Yeah, I try to stick with MVVM,
Right.
but then with all the new tasks and async await flow and Swift 6.2, I feel like Apple is pushing more on doing a lot of logic on the view side, which I really find it strange. I just want to have a clear separation of things, and I try to stick to the view model, doing all the logic, or I also introduce sometimes workers and so on. But then, yeah, it's a mixed thing depending on.
Do you notice your mindset changing to follow Apple's?
Slowly, yeah. Just because for some things it makes much more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Clemens? Do you have a preference?
No.
No? You
No.
just
I
wing it?
Yeah, I tried many things over the years, and in the end, I just
Yeah.
don't care a lot about the architecture. Just
Yeah.
try to release the app as quickly as
Yeah,
possible
that's
and get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not always.
I'm thinking I'm on that boat as well.
Yeah.
Paul loves it. But I've seen his SwiftUI as well, so we're fine. Yeah, so I am personally also think like it really depends on the complexity. If it's a lot of like methods you need, I also prefer to have like a store or manager, whatever you call it. But yeah.
What happens when you go back to the app if you haven't been writing any code for it? Do you find it hard to manage?
No, well, I find it. I need some time to understand my own code sometimes. Still, I often paraphrase it as refactor. I do love a good refactor too. It feels a bit like cleaning your room, like a spring cleaning. Well, I think that's enough about SwiftUI. We were talking about the future of apps and UI, and I think one thing that's not talked enough about is basically the Macification of iPadOS. Especially this year with the whole new windowing system, it's basically Apple not even trying to hide it anymore. That they want to.
They tried
merge
for a
them.
long time.
Yeah, they tried for a long time, but now it's they literally have everything the same. Sophia, how would you love seeing that become one thing? Save you one platform, maybe?
I want apps to be platform specific.
Right.
Because they specialize in different things, right? And how you use them and when you use them. But I hear what you're saying, the iPad and Mac are slowly merging, and if I use my external keyboard to my iPad and then go over and work on Xcode on my MacBook, I start touching the screen and, that's not good. So, yeah, it has definitely been some situations.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know how you experienced that, but for me, designing for iPad has always felt so hard in a way, because it feels like a desktop app, but you need to have buttons big enough for your fingertips, and then there's so much space. Just stretching out your iPhone app is also weird, but how big should it be? For me, that's very confusing. Like, how have you guys done iPad stuff?
Yeah, I feel sometimes the iPad is just between iOS and macOS, and it doesn't have a natural fit. And some apps are great for iPad. When you want the flexibility of an iPhone, for instance, if you're cooking, maybe.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But you want more information, so you can have like instructions and ingredients parallel and doing at the same time, which you cannot have on the iPhone that easily. But I wouldn't bring my MacBook to the kitchen, for instance. So because that would be so messy.
Maybe a Vision Pro. Yeah.
Yes, that is actually very nice ones. Unless you're like boiling something and you get the fog.
And the battery.
And then you start.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Monica, how do you feel about iPads? Are you?
I feel like the touch power users are being let down. I feel like it's very strange position for the iOS. For the iPad OS right now, because it's not Mac, as Sophia mentioned, it's not iPhone, and then you have so many things that you can navigate, and right now there's the cursor on iPad OS, which is fun if you have touchpad and mouse, but if you're still wanting to use it only as a one task thing, I don't personally like the update. So I would rather stick with the old one, but maybe there is something more that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, because they changed the cursor from a circle, like a fingertip almost, to like a pointer, right? But it still morphs into the buttons?
Only when you use the touchpad or mouse.
To make it more confusing.
Yeah. I mean, the price does explain that a lot.
Yeah.
It's even much expensier than here and in the Mac Air. So.
How do you do that with games? Does it feel like you have to design or develop a whole new experience for iPad, or?
I should probably sometimes. Often I just blow the UI up because I also don't really know how to really adapt it. It's a bit difficult, especially for games that you. I don't know, to certain kind of games don't really make that much sense in that big of a screen, I feel like. So that's why I often don't have a Mac version, but I kind of have to have an iPad version. So yeah, that is difficult. And also with now, I'm not sure if the requirement so there's the requirement that you now have to support windowing and have to support resizing, and that is a bit more difficult
because it's deprecated, right?
Yeah, and that's a bit more difficult for games, especially I have some games with very custom UI that is like pixel perfect made, and supporting, like letting the user dragging the size of the thing however big they want is a bit harder.
Yeah, and then we haven't not even talked about the dragon that's called Mac Catalyst, which is even more vaguely the in-between stuff. Does any of you have a Mac Catalyst app? You sort of?
Darkroom, yeah.
Darkroom is Mac Catalyst.
Yeah, we didn't rebuild for Mac specifically. I mean, Mac Catalyst is just like SwiftUI, or the difference between UIKit and SwiftUI. You never know what works and what doesn't. It's a bit of a slot machine, so it's a bit complicated. I mean, it's not as much of a constraint for us. I think, like, from a design perspective, the big difference I've always seen is that, as you've mentioned, there's the input, right? Is it touch versus cursor, which on iPad it's not a modality you can control. You have to support both, which is confusing, at least from a design perspective, because definitely when I first designed the first version for Darkroom on iPad, I designed it for touch, assuming that was the way to go. But you can clearly see that the UI language that Apple has introduced and is continuously introducing is actually much more cursor-based. And so I don't, like, one question I have, and Apple hasn't provided guidance on, is like, what's actually the input modality that most people use on an iPad? I don't know. I would love to know, because that would actually help me better understand how I can design it. And then I think Clemens has a fair point, which is that the responsiveness is a huge aspect. Like, when you make desktop apps, you don't have to make it as small. But on an iPad, you effectively have to go between your iPhone version and, well, now, whatever the heck you want to do size-wise. So I find it very, very challenging and complicated to have an opinion about that, because then you have to potentially make 3 versions of your app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's still with SwiftUI, maybe it's different with UIKit. It's still sometimes quite difficult to make very good specific UI for the right window size, because you have, of course, you have horizontal size classes and stuff, but I feel they're so vague, like regular and mini or whatever it is. So, and it's like, okay, but where does that start? And
we have
and
our whole
turn it around and
system. Yeah,
it's completely different again. It's maybe that's also a reason why there's so many bad iPads. But backstage we were joking about Android, put 4 Apple people in the room, and there will be a joke about Android at some point. But someone in the audience points out, very rightly so, there's now talks about Swift for Android. Are we excited to add support for, would SwiftUI-ish support for Android platform? Probably not SwiftUI, but somewhat in that form. Be interesting to you guys, or will it like, I don't want to bother with more platforms.
I feel like we are 2 persons, me and Caesar, doing everything for all platforms and introducing yet another platform. Yeah, it's very time consuming.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a different app because we use the same code base for all platforms. So we do the if OS dance like everywhere. But I feel like, it would take so much more time, because now we're constrained to the screen sizes that Apple offers. But on Android, I feel like there are so many more models that you have to cover.
Right.
So at the moment, I'm not looking forward to it, but who knows what the future will look like.
Yeah. Do you think Swift on Android can be a success?
I've barely seen an Android in so many years, so it's hard for me to tell.
What do you think, Monica, from a technical point of view?
I don't have a strong opinion. I actually really like it, because once you know the language, your options just, you have much more options if they actually do that. So I wouldn't mind it. It doesn't mean that we have to also to develop apps for Android. It's just another opportunity if we want to do that. So yeah, I don't find it strange. Also, like, Kotlin has been so similar with SwiftUI that it just makes more sense to have one general language.
Yeah, that would be great if the world could agree to one thing. But yeah, no, I understand. Will it become a success? I don't know, because I don't know the politics of programming languages that well. I hope so. Like you said, it would be really, because you already have with Swift on the surface also a great example. For example, like before that, if you would be able to write Swift, you needed to backend, it was like, oh no, here we go. Especially before AI, of course, like where do you even start? And now at least you can choose to develop for something new and understand the basics of language, and I think that will be really, really nice.
I mean, in the end, it's a business decision, right?
It is.
Do you have the resources? Can you pull it off? Is it something you want to do? Is there money there to be made there, etc.?
Yeah, I think business decisions is very good segue to our next topic, because I think app marketing and launch strategy is something we can all agree on is very difficult. We all know the feeling of working on this app for weeks, months, years, and then you launch it and it's just like, yeah, okay. Now what? How do we tackle that? Clemens, I think you have done quite a wide range of different strategies.
Yeah.
So like, do you have any preferences now? Or?
Yeah, and so for example, I really enjoy, if I can do it, to do a pre-order now. So that's like one of the first things that I like to do now with new projects, because it forces a deadline on me actually. So I have to actually
accountability.
I have to ship it, and I then reach a point where I realize I can't do all those things that I planned for the release, and then I have to figure all of that out and but also that gives me kind of a list of things that I can provide as updates, but also having a pre-order makes you think about screenshots and ASO and the title and subtitle and stuff like that much earlier. Yeah, but I mean, it's the things that I usually put off at the very last week of my app release. But then I have to think about it 2 months earlier or 3 months earlier, and then I can rethink, repolish that, get feedback from people from that. So doing a pre-order, that part I really liked. I just discovered that if you're targeting just a new OS like iOS 26, you can't do a pre-order, which is a little bit annoying. So I have to force myself to do all those things. But that thing especially for games works very, very well, because Apple also likes to feature games that do pre-orders. They don't do it that often for apps. They should definitely, I feel like. So that is my first go-to thing, and then try many different marketing strategies. Many of them worked, many of them didn't work, and it's very specific to the kind of app that you're building and to the target audience, I feel like.
Right. Do you not always think, because if it's 2 months in advance, like your UI might change a lot, right? So like, how do you do the screenshots at that point? Do you,
for Art of Fauna, I faked a lot of that, so I hope that I will reach that point of the UI, and it worked out there quite well.
I guess you get an end goal in some way.
Yeah. So, and it also forces me to prioritize doing certain UI things before, even though the UI doesn't really work.
Right.
I can just fake it that it looks like it would work.
Right. And Monica, I think a few months ago you launched an app as well. I think, if I'm correctly, it was a new app for you in a while that you actually properly launched. How did you tackle that?
Well, I faced the hard part. I didn't know actually where to start. Later on, I learned about the account warm-up. That's a thing, apparently.
What does that mean?
Well, basically, you open a social media account, you publish things that are in right now that people like, and then you get your audience, and then you use that account for your personal use. That's the thing. I haven't tried it yet, so I would definitely like to try it further down the line. But then, also depending on your users, what's your user base. But I feel like social media is helpful putting it out there on LinkedIn, also having the iOS community so supportive. People are resharing your apps. And I've heard also on Reddit it is very good to brand your app, but I also haven't tried it, so maybe that's why it didn't turn out that good. But yeah, there are definitely different approaches.
Right.
I feel it's hard to find the right one, and it's also hard to understand what are those approaches. But also we are, personally talking, I'm a developer, so I've never been learning about marketing.
No.
And that's the part that is very hard. And maybe finding someone that you'll collaborate with and do the app marketing for you, maybe that's sometimes the best idea.
Yeah, I've also heard great success stories from people that have done really well with influencer marketing. Personally, I always find it very difficult because it's like, yeah, I don't think like what does make this influencer be the one that needs to talk about my app, and it feels a bit fake. But I've heard really big successful stories. Like, did any of you try any influencer marketing? I think it's quite expensive to get in, but I've not really.
It's I know it works for certain apps for sure. But it really depends on like what you're making and if that audience actually has an influencer, right? Like for Darkroom, we could probably find somebody, but in the end, honestly, for like an app like us, like working with a photographer or a well-known photographer would work much better, which is the equivalent of an influencer. That being said, like there are definitely categories in like lifestyle, fashion, or wherever where actually like there's a really good match where that could work. So I think it really starts there, where you need an influencer in a domain where your app lives. Otherwise, like working with an influencer doesn't work anything. Then it's just paid advertising, and paid advertising can work. It can also miserably fail. So yeah.
High risk, high reward. But to stick with you, like obviously Darkroom is now 10 years old.
Yep.
I can imagine that launching a new big update is quite different than launching a new app, of course. Like how did it change for you over the time?
I mean, the difference is that over time you build an audience, and so you build your own distribution mechanisms. So
you warmed up your account.
Yep, you warmed up your accounts for sure. So that helps. That being said, we still put in quite a bit of effort to try and talk with people in the media or like our influencers, photographers, bring them in the loop, bring them in the beta periods, because we know that like a good in-depth review like outweighs a lot of marketing push, and so Darkroom we still don't spend. Well, we do some strategic search ads, Apple search ads, but other than that, we don't do any paid advertising at all, and we've never had to. Mainly because people review the product. There are enough websites that know us. We make sure they're in the loop early. So that's the main difference. We don't have to build the audience. Yeah.
Do any of you use in-app events for marketing? And I know you do a lot.
Yeah, we do as well.
Yeah. What's your experience with that? Sophia, have you used it?
We did when they first came, but we didn't get enough statistics for us to actually see some statistics. So it took more time to do the cover art.
Right.
So I'd rather just spend time in developing and polishing.
Well, if I remember, you two are now very much focusing on marketing as well. Like, what was the outcome? Like, what made you decide focusing more on marketing now?
We feel like we've come to a place where the app is stable, it's feature packed. We just did the OS 26 launch. So yeah, it feels like now we're focusing on growth. And we actually also tried Reddit, and some things I posted like a year ago on people asking for references for recipe organizers. I still comment on these comments. So they're like, oh, I found this, and can you answer this question I have? So that is actually working because it's indexed on Google.
Right, that's true. And by ChatGPT and stuff as well, I noticed at least. I've saw some responses where they mentioned our app, and it was literally just basically a rewording of one of the Reddit comments. I think it was also listed as source, to be fair. You do a lot of in-app events.
Yeah.
How?
I mean, for Art of Fauna, in general, I have the huge benefit that all the artwork in the Art of Fauna is based from old books, so I can always just go on Flickr or go directly on the Biodiversity Heritage Library and look up an old book, just take a beautiful picture of an animal and use that as graphic for an in-app event, so it's very cheap. So I don't spend hours and hours and hours to make those graphics. And I also have a very good designer that I'm working with who provided graphics for other apps very quickly. And for games especially, it became more important now with the new games app from Apple because they are surfacing in-app events of games that you have installed and had installed in the past.
Nice.
So that's a way of getting audience back in there.
Yeah.
So that's why I do a lot.
Do you localize them as well?
I do, yeah.
Do all language or just?
No. My games in general are mostly localized in very few languages, mostly German and English, sometimes a little bit more with help from friends. But especially like letter rooms or subwords that I made that are word puzzlers, and localizing word puzzlers in other languages is a lot of work. It's more difficult, I would say, than just localizing the UI.
Because that's also, of course, like ASO is obviously a big topic for, I mean, we still have 2 minutes for the break, that's maybe, but we can tackle it a little bit. I think ASO and localizing your App Store content is so powerful and often forgotten, because even if your app isn't localized, I feel like at least you'll be found more easily. Yeah. I see you all nodding when you said that. Like, do you have any hard experience on that, Monica? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we do localize everything, but also at Vivino, but also having in mind that that's a full company.
Yeah. Of copywriters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are also a lot of resources to do that and time, and also focusing on ASO. We basically have a person doing that.
Must be nice.
It does.
Yes, Sophia.
Yeah, we're actually using a script that uses AI to translate.
Yeah.
So
it's
very helpful.
Well, I'm biased. I use Helm, of course. I think that's a wrap for the first half of the talk show. Are we on? We are on. Hello. Are we all here? Yes. Good. All right. So we left off at app marketing and launch strategies. To launch something, you obviously need to build something too. You don't say. I'm wondering how do we all come up with what to build next, or like, if even like obviously there's always the new app syndrome and the endless list of ideas probably in all our Notes apps. So just I'm wondering, how do you all decide what to build next? I'll start with you, Sophia.
Personally, it's usually something that I need myself, which is also a good case, because then you have a tester, like immediately. Yeah. And also it should be something that you're passionate about, because you are gonna spend a lot of time building it. Yeah. So something I need and something I'm passionate about.
That's fair.
Would be my quick answer.
Yeah. And you, Clemens?
Yeah, it's the games are usually not something that I need, but it's more.
Exactly, that's what I was wondering.
But it's more that it's something that I like, an idea I get that I get very excited about, and for all of my games, it's even though I know that if I have an idea, I want to make a prototype very quickly, and if I can play the same prototype with the same level. Where I know the solution, if I can play that over and over and over again and it's not boring, then I kind of know that there is something special about it, and then I want to continue working on it. Yeah.
That's I've never looked at it that way actually, but like how for games it's really different because you also have to come up with like levels, I guess, and how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I mean it's for most of my games it's kind of easy because it's the same game mechanics. They don't change drastically, so it's figuring out that the core mechanics are interesting enough that you can play through 100 levels that have the same mechanics but are slightly different or have, like for the word puzzler, that the content itself is interesting enough that that you want to continue play it. To come up with new content is also now much easier with the help of AI. Before that, it's a lot of researching, which is also why for most of my games it took me like 2 years to actually build them, because the foundation was there, but I had to come up with good content for that.
Right. And Monica, how do you come up with the next big new thing?
I would totally agree with Sophia. That's basically whatever I need, and there's no anything like that on the App Store, or something's very particular. I would probably try to build it myself first.
Right.
And that's usually something that I'm also very passionate about.
And when do you decide to pursue it? Like at what point of the development phase do you think, this needs to exist now?
Doesn't it?
It does need to exist now. Like when do you decide to actually? Because, well, we all started side projects and never finished more than 2 screens or a settings page. But how do you get over that?
Maybe after I manage to complete the certain task that I started it for, then that brings some value, and then it's pretty good. And I've heard a lot of times people say ship it right away. So I think I've tried that, and it actually works, because once it's out there, you get a lot of feedback. You do understand that, okay, it might have covered your needs, but there are other people with different requirements, and then you would probably broaden up the solution.
Right. And Jasper, how do you do? Because for, like I said, you've been doing the same app for 10 years. I don't know how you do it. I start a new app every 3 weeks or so.
Well, Darkroom over the years has become a pretty big app, multiple platforms, and so there's lots of opportunities that you could almost consider as like independent applications. You have the file or the photo management. You have the editing. You have the presets. They're all independent, pretty rich features, and so I think that's how you can kind of get hooked into developing those things either further or developing new products within it. And so it's a small ecosystem that can sustain. That doesn't mean that we haven't had the conversation of like pulling those things out and making those independent applications, but then you get back into the how do you distribute it, how do you monetize it, how do you market it, and how do you do that with a small team. And so for us it's really a question of like it's definitely a need and a want, but I think that the 2 nuances I would add there is like the business need, like what do we need to make money or more money. But also like what do people need, not just but our customer base. We have a large customer base, so it's not just what we want, but also what they want. So balancing a lot of that. That's
actually quite an interesting point, because how do you decide what feature should be like pro or paid or premium or gold or platinum or?
Yeah, it's a bit
extra.
At the beginning we definitely like made pretty much everything free because we didn't have an answer to that question. Which is good, because like as a free app you gain a lot of traction, a lot of users, and that can become a distribution model. So we still have the freemium model, and that works really well for us because like you constantly have a set of people that you can promote your paid features to. So that works out really well for us. But in the end, it's also like it's the value that it delivers relative to how high the need is and how important it is for their workflow. However, sort of bad it might sound, but it's like the more they need it, the more you can make it paid. which is a slippery slope, right? You can't make everything paid because in the freemium model, because then
it's called a paid app.
Yep, that's then just a paid app, which I mean can work, but has different trade-offs that are more complicated nowadays, specifically on the distribution and marketing side.
Yeah. Does that work different for games? Like I can imagine with you have different business models for sure. But
Yeah, I tried a lot of things over the years. I now am also in a freemium model where people actually try out a few puzzles, and I try to then present a paywall at a certain point of time where they are kind of hooked with the game and they enjoy it, and I think they would enjoy more of the content. So that worked very well for Art of Fauna, better than I could have ever hoped for, to be honest. But it's also like for another game that I built. For the Ancient Board Game collection, I made that thing that is a collection of ancient board games, and I made that game free to play online. This has the good part that there are a bunch of players out there that play that there are enough players that you can actually play online, but it also has the downside of many of those people download the app, start an online game, and then delete the app. So other people are matched with them through Game Center, and then a customer who actually pays for the app gets matched to somebody who doesn't have the app installed anymore, and that whole thing also
it's an easy win.
It's an easy win, but it's a frustrating thing if you have to wait for somebody to reply to the game that isn't there anymore. So it's difficult, and it's different for certain kind of games, but usually a freemium model where people can try out the game is definitely better, especially in the games market where there is so many things out there, so many games where you can spend years playing them for free, basically, and to compete with that.
And obviously tokens and any virtual currency really is like super popular with the game.
But also, I think like one nuance there is that it also really depends on the pricing and the business model. If you have a subscription, it's very different from an in-app purchase. Yeah. And for an in-app purchase, also really depends on the price you're at. If it's a €1 app, it doesn't matter that much. If you're a €150 app, it matters a lot. And same with subscriptions. So it's a bit of a complicated constellation.
Yeah, maybe a bit of an extension to that. Like, how do you determine the value of a new feature you're building? Because I think that's the $1 million question for sure. And we've probably all tried different ways and probably don't know the answer, but I would still love to hear your efforts.
I think
go ahead.
I think it comes down to what is the MVP.
Yeah.
If you have a subscription-based app, the MVP in our case is free, so the user can test it, see whether or not they like the idea or the UI and navigation, for instance. And then the add-ons are things that are nice-haves. And regarding if it should be one-offs or subscription, I think it depends on your costs. So, for instance, in our recipe organizer, users can import from Instagram, for instance, but for that we use AI, and that automatically adds a cost to us. So that obviously have to be behind a paywall.
Right.
So I think if you jot it down, like what is logical, it would be helpful to make decisions that way.
Yeah. Monica?
Yeah, I would have mentioned that at Vivino at least, we sometimes do A/B testing on prices as well, and I think that's very interesting to see where you can push the price, but then also give enough value for the users. And while we're at that point, we are currently validating the premium subscription for our users in regards that we are running a lot of interviews with premium users, and then obtaining the information of which premium features they've been using. And we just found out that there are so many they haven't been using, and then it just doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So I think that also talking to premium users or even freemium users that they want to subscribe is just understanding what are their daily needs. Or at least in our case, we understood that many people pay just because they want to support the app itself. So that's also something to understand.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always try to do it when I at least get support mail from someone that's really passionate about your app already, and they point out like bugs or things they want to see different. I often try to talk to them, like jump in on a quick call, even if it's just 15 minutes, and just hear about how they try to use that. Because that little chat not only brings you closer to that customer, because for them as well, you become the face of the app that they love using. Or at least want to love using, and for you a direct insight on what you could charge maybe, but no, in general, like for me that also works very powerful. And like you said, sometimes a feature just costs you money, so you kind of have to either charge for it or bite the bullet if it's not too crazy.
One interesting thing I've heard people talk about, and we're actually playing around with, or at least discussing at Darkroom, is that you make your paid features. Like if you have a subscription model, we have Darkroom Plus, and there's just only one. There's not flavors of it. There's just one, which makes it very easy. It's either free or it's paid, and then you pick your flavor of paid. But there's only one set of features that you can unlock with it. Is that you make the differentiating. Or the most needed feature paid, and so that means that like you make a new big feature and that's part of the paid. So that's a pretty obvious one because that's differentiating, that's new, that's exciting, that's paid. But that also means that allows you to make the what used to be a premium feature, which has become a commodity because perhaps you don't just have it but your competitors too, that becomes free as well. I think it's an interesting way to think about it because then it's always about like what do your users need most, or how do your users perceive your app as being the most beneficial or useful to them.
Then you launch your big things, then you want to make it the best thing, obviously, and the Oscar of our industry is obviously the ADA. We have 5 cubes in this audience, unfortunately just from 2 people. Or in this panel, I mean, sorry. Jasper, you have the most. Let's start with you.
Sorry.
What makes an ADA app an ADA app? Like what is that top tier quality?
I wish I knew. Apple doesn't share the
well,
to-do
you kind of
list.
know something. You have 3 of them.
Oh, I think it's interesting because I've obviously talked about it with people, and like there's like the aspects that I value the most, and then there's the aspects that I think Apple values the most, which I think are definitely two sides of the same coin in this case. For me, it's mostly about craft and caring about not as many details as possible, but like definitely like the big ticket items, you know, the visual design. Like a logical navigation, integration with the system. I think like feeling at home. So I never say like a system with like system controls. I don't like that can be useful, but I don't think systems controls is actually what Apple is looking for. I think what Apple is looking for is like apps that feel at home within the ecosystem, because even they have tons of apps that don't have system controls. So I think that's the category. I think on the other side, there's Apple looking at it and really wanting to have showcases. Showcases of the latest, greatest new features. And I think it's not just that, like that can't be a one-off. I think it's actually like consistency of your company and your product and their willingness to adopt new technologies so that they can use you as a showcase.
Right. Free marketing.
Yep.
Well, not
it's free marketing for us, but it's also like it is clearly so that like Apple wants to get other developers to adopt the latest and greatest APIs. Mm-hmm. That is the purpose of the ADA.
Yeah, and let's be honest, we like working with
I'm not complaining.
Yeah. And for you, it's been a different experience, I think.
No, I feel like like both showcasing new stuff is a huge part of it, consistency also, and the craft. What we talked before, going that extra mile of making an interaction super nice, or I think we talked about this before, adding sound effects or making certain interactions like haptics, stuff like that, making things just nice for like 5% of your users, but it's those 5% really matter, and it's like going the extra mile there. And same thing for accessibility, for example, which is where I got the most recognition, like really caring about that and really showcasing what is possible with accessibility. It's a huge part.
You both mentioned craft in a way. What is craft in an app? Because obviously it's polishing the details, but I feel there's something that for us, maybe with a trained eye, is quite obvious. But especially if you're just starting out in the app industry, how would you train yourself to learn that craft?
I think like I started just by like for me the benchmark is Apple. Some days, not all days, most of the time. And so for me it really started in trying to replicate that, and then in realizing how hard it is to actually like try and make an app, even like Mail. It's actually really hard. If you just think about everything that it does and the consistency with which it does, and without crashing and without like all the little things. And so I find it really difficult because it's a list of like 55 things. There isn't one way to achieve that. It's like caring about the 55 little things, and I think that brings you to craft. Yes, it's like pretty icons, and yes, it's nice animations, but it's also like a lot of technical things that you have to consider very carefully.
Yeah, so in a way it would be focus, make sure you do not too much to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. Like, doing fewer things really well, like definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I started my career as a designer as well, obviously. And I think one thing that you learn quite quickly as a designer, which often gets forgotten, is that reiterating the same thing 1,200 times is actually really, really beneficial. Do you think that should happen more within apps? Like, do we all agree on that?
I think so. I think it's really tempting to always like work on the new features and add the new features. If I specifically think about it in the context of an ADA, I know that Apple really likes it when a company shows or product shows that they tackle the feature, perhaps even removed it or like improved it, right? It's all about like accessibility is a big word, but like workflow efficiency, like Apple cares a lot. You can see it with, I think like historically it's been really fascinating how often they've redesigned the Photos app. It's ridiculous. So I don't know how many versions I've seen over the past 30 years, but it's like 15 versions by now. And so I think there's definitely an ethos there to be learned, which is like, as you're an indie, it's really complicated, obviously. But I think there's a lot to gain from it, for sure.
Yeah, and also, how do you sell it to the user, right? Like, oh, look, we have a shiny new same feature.
I mean, if it's better.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like the core thing that the user is using every day, and if it's getting better and making the core thing that they enjoy in the app nicer, then I think that's an easy sell for them.
And at what point would you like re-communicate a feature to the user as almost like, hey, we revamped it?
I always do it.
You always do
YOLO.
it? YOLO. Cool. Well, that's good. You briefly mentioned sound design, and I think that's a very, very good point that I would love to talk about a little, because we've all worked with the same sound designer. Do you have, Monica and Sophia, do you have any experience with sound design or working with a sound designer?
No, unfortunately not.
Very few do.
But that's the thing, that very few, because it's something that's often forgotten, because we all, probably, who has their phone on silence outside of this room? Like, I think we all agree, right? Like, everyone has. But and that's the thing. I think this is exactly that 5% extra love and care that for the 3 people that have it on
For the nerds.
Ring, I guess.
Yes.
I think for me, the whole sound design also in my apps comes from the games, because in games sound is a very important thing, both as an accessibility thing, but also like game experience and game feel thing. And so I always had sounds a little bit in mind. I also were at points where I thought they are not super important because most people have them on silence, but I realized that the people who hear the sounds are so, if they are done well, they are so extremely passionate and happy about good sound design that they will flood the App Store with good, nice reviews and send you very nice emails and everything. So it's definitely worth doing it.
And it's also part of your brand. You know,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
You that it's something people unawarely notice. Like they connect to certain sound. Like in Darkroom, the tick, for example, is such a
yeah, I think there's a difference there, right? Where it's like in the game it helps the immersion.
Yeah.
I think like in an app it's slightly different. I think like the best equivalent is haptics. Yeah. Like I think like on an iPhone, I also have it on mute, and I think haptics basically serve the same purpose to me as sound does. Yeah. But when you're on an iPad, on a Mac, there is no haptics. Yeah. Or like now, with some shady APIs on Mac, you can, but it's not as common. That's actually where sound design, I consider it as the same realm as haptics, because it's not for apps. It's not about like creating a rich, immersive thing. That's for games where it's like really additive. But I consider it more like a very subtle confirmation or thing, so that you don't need to look at the slider to know that you reset it at 0, but you can hear it, and on your phone you can feel it. And so it's an accessibility thing, but I wouldn't put it as like for people who have difficulties, but it's actually for everybody, because you don't have to look at a thing because you can feel it, or you don't have to look at it, but you can hear it. And that can be very useful. And is it like a 2% thing? Totally. But it can add.
Yeah.
And I think the brand part also is interesting to me. I was recently walking around in Spain, and somebody was just finishing their Duolingo lessons, and I was just hearing the Duolingo, the correct sound, and it was immediately thrown back to the app, and thought that I should do my Duolingo lesson again. So it can, it is a very nice thing, and a very like.
Right. What language are you doing on Duolingo?
I wanted to do Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. The easy one.
Yeah. The same thing happens with me. For example, in Denmark, when you use the public transport, you use an app that basically transmits a sound, like tink, when you check in.
Sorry?
When you check in, and then when you check out, it's the same sound.
Yeah.
Also, when you do it with a physical card, so whenever you hear that sound while you're walking out of the metro station, you're just like, oh, I haven't checked out of the app.
Perfect example.
Yeah. So it gives a lot of value, much more than visual or essential.
Yeah, without noticing, it's so much more important.
Well, it's like imagine paying with Apple Pay without the ping at the end.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of scary. Like
it's
you're like,
did it go through?
Yep. No, exactly. Yeah.
But I think there is also you should be aware of not overuse it.
Yeah, of course.
Because then it loses all its meaning. Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
It's a fun one to play with, though.
I think it depends on the app and also the action.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, 100%.
Well, that's why you hire Josh, and he'll tell you where that line is.
This is not a sponsor. Let's grab some questions from the audience. Okay, from Alex. When you have a subscription model, do you also add lifetime purchase?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Done. No, if I can start, like for me, yes, I've tried it without it once, and the amount of hate I got from people that fundamentally hate subscriptions was scary. And like very passionate emails about how dare you.
For the person who decides not to, you should let them do support mail afterwards. Yeah. For sure.
But to follow up on that, like we talked about, like with AI cost, it can be somewhat a bit of a thing, of course, because you use tokens. We with Helm have it as an option because we know like a lot of people prefer it, and we figured that's why we put the price in some level that like before you use that amount of tokens, we talk about at least 5 years on normal use case. And if you do it quicker, I would say just hats off to you because then you deserve my tokens. But yeah, that's obviously something to consider, and probably that's also where this question comes from.
Yeah, I
How
think
do you
like services, like a lifetime purchase in the context of services. So when you have like a server or like AI running or whatever, is very complicated. And I find it difficult to blanket make a statement about that because it really depends on the economics of your business. But definitely want to be very careful with. Yeah. Big Excel sheets.
We don't offer it.
You don't offer it.
No.
Do you get
No.
any pushback from it?
So we've had some reviews saying like, oh, I love the app, but I'm not going to pay for it because I don't do subscriptions.
Yeah.
But we are continuously developing the app and putting in the hours, and we're trying to making a sustainable business from it. So for us to have a lifetime one-off, it would have to be like a ridiculous amount.
You know the funny thing, like
So-
the experience I've had with that is that the ridiculous thing oftentimes is better than not having it, because then at least they can't say that you don't have it.
Yeah, it's
When
true.
you do have it, you're sort of like, well, we have it. Might be expensive, but like that's a choice.
$1,000.
Yeah, like this is what we believe it to be worth in the future. So you can just pay us now
Yeah.
for our work that's going to be
Yeah.
put down into the app.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated one.
Yeah.
And I understand some people, some developers might find it a bit scary as well, in a way, because you sell lifetime, right? Like, oh, I sell a lifetime worth of this app. But like, do you feel guilty if you desert it then after X amount of years? Because you don't, especially when you just launch it, you're not sure if it's gonna take off. Even if it does take, you're not sure if you're gonna keep that passion that you were talking about. I certainly had that. Like I've once made a kite surfing app. I don't even kite surf.
Well, so let me put some numbers to this, so that it's like maybe more like contextual, because otherwise it becomes a bit abstract. But I think for Darkroom, for the like first 3 years, we didn't even have subscription, or 4 years, we didn't have subscriptions, and it was just in-app purchases. That was just dumb. Like that made no sense. Like it was like $4.99, and then like people could use it forever. Like don't do that. That's not a good idea. And then we switched to a subscription model. We offered a forever purchase, and for the first 2 years we didn't make any changes. It accounted for almost 30% of our revenue, which is considerable. Like for us, that made the difference between like being able to pay ourselves or not. And so we stuck with that. Now, like we've kind of priced it out of the room, and it still accounts for like 15% of revenue, which is still considerable. And so just to like make the point that for a lot of people, it's the principle, not the value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a choice.
Yeah. Speaking of the value, someone just asked about what do you think of people trying to game the App Store by buying reviews, keywords, installs, and other questionable tactics. Do you believe Apple could do more to address this issue?
Yes.
I think Apple's trying, and more. They do more with AI stuff on the App Store now as well. We'll talk about discoverability in a little bit more, because I said another question about that. But also, I think it's never ever really worth the risk, because you obviously get like a massive ban on your.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think like most people don't realize that you just need to ask for ratings and reviews as often as you humanly can. Like literally, like ping that thing until you turn blue, because Apple throttles it. Like you don't have to worry about it. Apple manages it for you. That is huge, like huge. Like once we switched to, like we hired a growth engineer at some point, and his first thing was like turn that damn thing on and like don't stop, and it worked really well. On the spam side, like buying it seems, I don't know what you gain from that, because honestly, just like on every launch, asking and then actually getting honest reviews will get you so much further. And I know the Apple algorithm, which we all don't know whether exist, but definitely exist, really favors a lot of ratings and reviews, like lots. The more, the higher you score on lots of different things. Yeah.
Anyone else has something to add to that?
I think it's I also agree that buying is shady and shouldn't be done and stuff like that. But asking for I think I did the mistake in the past that I was very cautiously about asking people that I had interactions with to go write a review. But for Art of Fauna, I was very straightforward with that. I with every single email that I got, I throw in a PS. If you like this app, then please write a review.
Yeah.
And I think everybody who had a good interaction with me through email went to the App Store and was happily to write that as a review. Most people just don't think of even doing that.
Yeah.
So asking the people who are very passionate about your app to actually write a review is the much better strategy than thinking about buying reviews.
Yeah. No, I think that's the quickest growth hack
Yeah.
you can do. Just having it in your signature of your email.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, or I have a newsletter for Art of Fauna, and the last part of the newsletter is always, hey, if you like the app and you haven't written a review yet, please write a review. And works perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Or add the option in your settings.
Yeah,
or
also in the
Mhm.
settings.
So literally make it easy. I think almost everybody, when they start and launch their first app, they're always really scared.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, because you kind of don't know. But I think definitely experiences learned. Just get as much as possible, which can be a bit confronting at times. But in the end, turns out really well.
Yeah. Also, someone asked about to stay in the App Store discoverability. Do you think a viable product is still possible without an editorial feature, which seems hard to get? Sophia, what do you feel?
Could you repeat the question, please?
It went up. Do you think a viable product is still possible without an editorial feature, which seems hard to get?
You mean like an editorial feature by Apple in the App Store?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
assume so.
From experience, we've been featured quite a couple of times, and we've talked with others who's been featured. Maybe not this is from the editorial team, but a regular feature in one of the lists. But it bumps up your impressions for sure, but it does so for people who are not looking for your specific
it
kind
messes
of
up your
app.
conversion rates.
Yeah, so it's nice, of course, because it's some credibility and it's like a good tap on the shoulder, but it doesn't pay your bills really necessarily, unless someone that happens to want your app stumbles upon it because it was featured, but it doesn't necessarily I think marketing is a better chance.
It used to be much more impactful,
Yeah.
way more. But I don't know since when, but 2020 or 2022.
Since the Today tab, basically.
Yeah, since it became algorithmic and the distribution is completely dynamic. Before it was a sledgehammer. You got a feature and you got $100 million downloads. It was absolutely crazy. Nowadays it's super smoothed out, and so you see a bump.
Yeah.
But it's not that impactful anymore. That doesn't mean that it doesn't matter on the soft side, the impression, the prestige that comes with it. But it's not you're going to get magical money flying at you, unfortunately. No.
Magical money.
Yeah, I wish. Well, back in the day, definitely. When Darkroom launched in 2015, that was just.
Yeah.
That was the whole world saw it because there was one front page for
Yeah.
everybody. That was nuts. Yeah.
To continue on that, Monica, do you think the execution of an idea is more important than the idea itself, or is it the other way around?
I think it's a mix of both. You cannot make execution with low quality and then expect for a high number of users. I think both the visuals, for example, doesn't have to be always the execution, does matter for the user. and just the integration of a feature within the full app. Where do you put it? How much it helps within a certain moment, and just the reliability as well. So I'd rather, and also like the idea of the future, of course.
Yeah.
But I think most of all is the quality.
Yeah, I think what's very much is the case is that you only have one first impression, right? And if that quality is high, then you tend to stick around longer. And it's so hard to turn that little cloud download icon back to an open button once you lose them. That's realistically, because
I think it's true. I think it doesn't mean that you shouldn't give yourself some space to fail, otherwise you'll never launch. But I agree, like you should try, like once you have some form of validation, like crank up the quality as soon as you can.
Yeah, and let's be honest, some ideas are just not so good.
Yeah, they can look pretty, but they can still be very bad.
Yeah, and the word of mouth is both true for good apps and bad apps.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, I think also
that's a very good point.
on the marketing side, that's very important.
You don't want to be the bad app.
Yeah.
Another one is where does the inspiration come from when it comes to designing an app that feels like Apple design? I've always struggled as a developer when it comes to coming up with something that feels native. That's a tough one.
Well, I think that for me there's two parts to it. One is like I honestly always try and see if I can pull off an app just with default components, just so that I know that I can or cannot.
Yeah.
That also gives you a good sense of like, does that feel good? Does that where does that go? Both from a technical and a design perspective. And then I think from there, it definitely becomes complicated. It becomes a taste and an experience thing to come up with controls that look and feel like they're native. It's funny because like a lot of people have said about Darkroom that it feels native. There's nothing native control about Darkroom. Like everything, like even the slider is a custom control. Like everything is custom. And so it's funny that people say it. And it's kind of hard to put your finger on like what specific thing that is. It's not one thing. Again, it's like it's a little different things. It's when you make a slider, it's that it has haptics and it has this and it has that, and it's like so many different things.
I think that especially when you're making a new app, for me at least, I think that keeping it to just native controls in the beginning is so important because if your navigation structure is messed up, then then you're already starting with with two goals behind this.
Yeah. Well, I remember a few years ago I had a conversation with the design team at GitHub, and because they were starting to build their mobile apps, and one of their big questions was exactly that, which is like, how do we balance like creating custom controls versus like native ones? Which for a company at scale and wanting to move fast and wanting to deliver value to people as quickly as possible, it was a really complicated balance. And like one of the big things that I gave them from my perspective was like only do custom when it adds value more than the native one. Only then do it. I think it's always helped me to first start with native, and then if it breaks, only then move on. Don't start with your own thing. Designers love doing their own thing first. It's fun, but it's hard to build.
Yeah.
But you get so much for free when you use the native stuff.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Especially speaking of accessibility.
No, so
like
much.
You cannot compare.
Yeah.
Have any of you made any really weird custom controls? Think about it.
Not yet.
There's also a question, because we're all superheroes, of course, so like, what's our origin stories? Like, what's your origin story for getting into programming for Apple, and how important do you find a formal education compared to self-taught education? Monica?
Yeah, I have education in computer science, and I've actually worked on web before this. I hated it. So I launched an internship in my first company that I was doing iOS. And I've been working with augmented reality ever since then, up until 2 years ago. So that was a very fun twist because I've never done any mobile app development, neither augmented reality. Everything was so new to me, but also so interesting. And that's why I just continued doing that. And then I transferred to Vivino, but yeah, it's still fun. Not as fun, but still.
Nice, well done. You developed the taste. Just kidding. What's your origin story, Sophia? I think we all have a very different origin story, but this is actually quite a good.
Probably. Yeah, so I actually have a background in, I have a bachelor in textile engineering.
Wow.
And I was looking for jobs. And I was sitting next to my husband, who was just overwhelmed with, come work with us, you get this for free and all these benefits, yada, yada, yada. And I was like so upset, like, I need that, I want that. So I decided, okay, I'm just gonna pivot and learn how to code. So I actually started off in Swift Playgrounds. You know, this little character, Bit or whatever his name is, and you guide him around. And yeah, so that's how I started, and now I work full time with both our own apps and clients.
Yeah, cool.
So it's possible.
It is possible. Self-taught.
Yeah.
Clemens?
Yeah, I have a formal education in computer science, so I went first to school about electrical engineering, where I learned program, and then went to do my bachelor and master's in computer science. I think it's not so super important for the things that I do right now, so I was never taught iOS development there. The only good framework that this whole thing gave me was that first I knew how to program in general, but also it gave me enough space around my education that I could try out other things, and I then taught myself how to do Objective-C just because I liked the platform a lot. And then
with Objective-C?
Yeah, with Objective-C still. No, but it was for me, I owned an iPod Touch, and I downloaded on this iPod Touch as a person in school apps like Fantastical that I didn't need as a person in school, but I just liked the interactions there and liked playing around with it, and I wanted to learn how to do that myself. So I started to figure out how that actually works, and then taught myself iOS.
Yeah, it's very...
Dinosaur. I have a formal education in graphic design, which I never finished, so I guess it's not formal.
Informal education.
But back in the day, none of the stuff that I do today was a profession, and so I couldn't study interaction design. None of that existed, and so I was really into early web design. This is pre-Ajax and all that fun stuff. So I learned a little bit of web development, which I thought was really fun. It was sort of the first ways to make stuff interactive, and I really got into Mac from the customization of my macOS 8 and 9 days, which I loved, like creating my own pixel icons and like customizing my Mac. That's where it all started, and it snowballed into where I'm at.
A lot more.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Yeah, for me it's like I did some media design school, but apps weren't officially a thing at the school. I think I tried to sell it to the school as like, yeah, this is cool. But they categorized it as like graphic designer even, I think, which makes no sense. Nope. And then I dropped out of school, and then at some point I was sick of having to find a developer every time I had an idea. So I was like, I'll just try learn how to program myself, and it was Objective-C, and I was like, nope, I'll keep designing for a little bit longer. And then Swift came along, and it was all happy, and well, not all happy because it was miserable in the beginning, but it was at least legible to me, and yes, something I could potentially understand. And I think from there on, it was just, for me, it was really just focusing on shipping that first project. Also solving one of my own problems, and just very clear MVP solution really. I wanted to be able to connect at least one Apple API to a button or whatever. Because I felt like if you don't understand one API, then you can.
Well,
more
I tried
easily-
that in the AppleScript days, which was really lovely.
AppleScript world. So that for me that's how it rolled into doing design engineering. I guess that's the cool new term these days. We go back to there's one more question, but I think this is a good one. Like, given the previous discussion on iPadOS, what are your hopes, dreams, fears for the rumored iPhone foldable? Should it run iPadOS, enabling pro apps like Final Cut in split view, slide, or making comeback? Is iOS about to get harder? Like, what do we feel like it's gonna happen there? Because that's.
I mean, we all have Apple Watch apps, so no problem, right?
I love Apple. I use it too.
I actually love Apple Watch.
Yeah.
But that's another topic.
That's a different topic. Yeah. I personally, I think it's all connected to like the whole windowing system that we have now since this year, I think, right? Like because that basically they try to enforce us to make the app work in any size.
Well, it depends on how they make it foldable. If it's an iPhone that you fold in half, then it makes the screen smaller. So that's not gonna fly. But if it's gonna fold open, then it's going to be bigger. In which case, it is totally the iPadOS one.
Yeah. Yeah, if it folds like this,
Clamshell.
it's gonna be like a
That's a problem.
watch.
Yeah, exactly. So
Basically, like a bigger watch app.
Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. Let's see what they come up with.
Yeah. I'm not too excited by the idea of foldable.
More work.
One smaller phones, not bigger ones. Okay, we have about 11 minutes left. I think that's perfect amount of time to start about the final topic that everyone talks about. So let's start talking about AI.
Yay.
It's undeniable. It's like if anything has popped up, it's the last 2 years. It's AI. And there's a bunch of questions about it, and I think one of them, a lot of them that come back is about workflows. Like, how does it affect our workflows today? Because I think that's quite different maybe from us as well, because especially some more on the design side, AI is slightly less.
I don't know how to code. Oh, I do now.
Yeah. How do we feel about it? Let's start with you, Monica.
I do find two perspectives. So one, let's start like with smaller apps. When I try to code something and I just want to do an MVP, I find it great because I could just wrap up something within an hour or two and then have prototype of some solution and hand it to friends to just see if that makes actually sense and validate it. On the other, so I'm just talking about the positive things right now. On the other side, in my full-time job, I use it quite often, especially Claude. And one thing that I've noticed, so our project is huge. So imagine how many lines of, actually don't know the number, but there are probably more than 500,000 lines of code in our project. And then we are giving some tasks, feature that we have to work on. And in my perspective, I might have not been working on with something. And then just having a big overview done for you by AI, that's very time saving. And I've been using it mainly for that in my full-time job, and I love it. Yeah.
So, Sophia, you already mentioned AI a little bit for translations and stuff.
Yeah, so
how else has it formed your workflow now?
we use AI for translating all the localizations for the app, which is quite a few languages. But regarding code, I don't use it. Maybe I can check something up, but I have to. It's the code base is quite big. Maybe not that big, but it's still pretty big. And with all the platforms, you have to take into considerations. And since we develop in Swift, and Swift UI, it can hallucinate a lot. Like, yeah, you can do this, and then it turns out, oh, you can't.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and even when I correct it, So personally, I prefer reading articles
Nice.
from the community, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, in terms of getting it on the App Store, definitely, and copy and things like that, definitely.
All the dull tasks, really.
Yeah. And then you remove all the dashes, so it doesn't look like,
Yeah, so you mentioned, like, because you obviously are very much a designer, but do you feel like you can do a lot more now with?
Yeah, for me it changed a lot. I mean, I've worked on enough apps, I know enough about like the possibilities. You know, I can read the languages, but for me, like memorizing all the APIs and all the syntax and stuff is really complicated. So for me, it's like really made the barrier to entry to participate much easier. So in that sense, it's been fantastic. I agree. Like there are areas, although recently it's improved a lot, but there's areas where it was really bad. And still find in darkroom, especially like in complex layout situations, it just doesn't have enough understanding of that specifically for it to be super useful. Whereas in other cases, like you can, you know, one-shot a bug fix by explaining it and give it a couple of screenshots and you test it and it runs. And obviously I don't commit YOLO. I make sure to have it be reviewed and tested.
But I should try that.
Yeah, exactly. Another engine. No, so I think it's made the participation of non-educated or non-experienced engineers a lot easier. So I really appreciate that aspect, and I do know that the engineers on the team also really use it indeed to like accelerate and, you know, get quick prototypes out there, quick ideations or potential approaches to it out there, even for larger refactors. Slowly it's starting to get to a point where you can try and use it. So I think that for us it's more been like a try and use it, not like be religious about whether it does or doesn't work. It's just like, let's just see how far it can get, and it's been proven to be very productive for us. Yeah.
You as a solo indie dev, do you feel like you have a bigger team with AI, or is it more of a...
Definitely. I feel like especially for, I'm also not using it for super complex tasks or anything like that. For MVPs, for making quick prototypes, that definitely helps. But also for like tiny, nice features, it also often helps. So for example, in Pocket Shelf, in the onboarding flow, you can set your own name, but some people don't want to put their own name there. They can, we make suggestions of here, pick one of those, and the names that we provide there are just names from famous authors or famous book characters. And this is basically just a big enum that I let the AI generate, and it was like a feature that took with the AI like 5 minutes to build, something like that. But if I would have done it without the AI, I would need to do some research and like write down all the different strings and stuff like that. So making like nice little details and nice little features there, it helps a lot. And also for Art of Fauna, I am a terrible writer. So I can, like writing texts is difficult for me. So for the animal descriptions that I have in Art of Fauna, I always start with the facts that I want to have there. I research the facts, but then I give it to the AI and help it to make a very nice text out of that, or at least some iteration of that, and then let me iterate over that again.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because obviously we all quite quickly think about AI as in like a companion workflow. But I think it can be also super powerful in the part of content, right? Like we'll all have like very content-rich apps. I use it to create like summary reviews of like little gist of what does this album sound like for our album of the day, because I don't have time to write that every day. Like I know the album, and like what you said as well, you give it some facts and then make it actually nice to read instead of gibberish. Well, part of that is now, obviously, since this year, with foundation models, which is local and stuff, which is really nice. Maybe not as nice as we want it to be just yet, all the time. What do you guys think of how is that going to change the future of content?
I think
nice question to end it off with.
Yeah, I think for Darkroom we have a really nice example. We have presets, people can create presets and people can share presets. And for a while, we've wanted to give people ways to customize them, so descriptions. The problem is, like, as soon as you make community-driven presets, descriptions open, you can have all kinds of random bad stuff in there as well. And so we've held that back. But because of AI, we actually like pass on the JSON, and it's incredibly good at giving like a human accessible description of what the preset will create as an effect. And so this is a great example where like that's actually helped SEO, because now we have presets with the descriptions. It helps search for those descriptions and for those presets. Plus, like for humans, it also really helps because they can actually read what it will achieve separate from the preview images. So I think it's an example of like, you know, yeah, it makes mundane things feasible. And like I could not, like that's not a thing you want to do with human curation. It's just not scalable. And even getting people in the community to do it for their own presets is difficult, because then you have to tell them how to do it, and you want it kind of consistent, and you don't want them to put weird stuff in there. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with it, for sure.
Yeah, what do you, how is that for you, Monica? Also, I guess with Vivino, obviously has an insane amount of different wine bottles in there. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, so my take on foundation models is that they're super, super helpful for smaller apps in the apps. First, cost saving, that you run on your device. Then it is just way simpler to integrate them with the generable macro and the guidance macros, and you know what to expect from that model. You don't have to give such a huge prompt. That's super cool. And I hope they're just going to improve the model themselves. But on the other side of Vivino, we have millions of users.
Yeah.
And then we have our data, that's our key value, and we don't want to share it, right? And also one more thing is that we also have Android, and that's not a use case for us to use these foundation models. So yeah, unfortunately, we do rely on the backend for now. That is in communication with any AI model. And then we do receive just, so we have AI features, and we're currently working on one huge, that's like a chat box with a lot of data from Vivino, but that's also on the iOS side, we just handle it as a C connection link. We just handle the data. We don't do any usage of the foundation models, unfortunately. So that's why I think that it is a great technology, but it's not for everyone for now.
That's great. I think with that said, we can wrap it up. We still have a few open questions. I think we'll put it in our Slack channel, and we'll make sure to try and answer all of them. But yes, I want to thank you all for coming, being crazy enough to accept my invite and come sit here on stage with me. So let's give an applause to my panelists. And thank you all for listening to this Jappa. Thank you all.